Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
One of the most viewed videos on my channel is how to behave during a traffic stop. And I go through all the things you can do to lessen the odds, to reduce the odds of you getting a ticket. It's not carved in stone, it's not guaranteed, but these things work, and it's based on 33 years of legal practice, talking to police officers and prosecutors and so on, but also interacting with the police on my own. I do field research. But I actually got an email from a guy just the other day. He goes, Steve, I got pulled over, and I remembered your video, and I did everything in the video, and I got a warning, and I think that's one of the things that helped me get the warning instead of getting a ticket. And so I talk about your prototypical traffic stop. You're driving along, cop pulls up behind you, turns the lights on, you pull over. And I've pointed out that seemingly every time the police officer will say, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Do you know why I pulled you over? And that is not a conversation starter. Now, it's interesting because some people claim it is. But no, they should say, if they wanted to do that, hello, how are you? Having a good day? No. Do you know why I pulled you over? Well, I'm not a mind reader, okay? But they're hoping that you'll confess, because if you say, I was speeding, they go, okay, that was easy. Now they've admitted they were speeding. I ran that stop sign back there. Okay. Now we know that they ran a stop sign. By the way, what if I pulled you over for speeding, but you just admitted you ran the stop sign? Now they got you for two things. So yes, it is a trap. They ask you that for a purpose. They want you to incriminate yourself. So I've mentioned before that it depends on how it's phrased and how you can do it, but you want to answer the question such that you were driving perfectly fine and you're not really sure why he would pull you over. Or she. It could be a she. It could be these days. When I don't say that, I get in trouble. So Bob sent me a note from Minnesota, said Minnesota police can no longer ask why a driver thinks they've been pulled over. And I'm glad they've done this. Now, unfortunately, the new rule has no teeth, but at least it's there. So from minpost.com, many drivers across Minnesota have likely heard the same question, and this is true everywhere. Asked of them by police during a traffic stop, do you know why I pulled you over? As of 2 weeks ago, officers are not supposed to any longer pose the question to drivers they've stopped and instead must inform them why they initiated the stop. I pulled you over because. So the change in law is one of many provisions included in the Judiciary and Public Safety Supplemental Budget Bill passed by the legislature and signed into law by the governor at the end of the last session that happened just in May. According to the new language, an officer making a stop for a traffic violation can no longer ask the driver to identify the reason for the stop, but must instead tell the driver a reason, unless it would be unreasonable to do so under the totality of the circumstances. An officer's failure to do so, however, does not dismiss the charge, the citation, or any evidence collected during the stop. So apparently they're not allowed to ask you, but if they do, they don't get in trouble for it, meaning that the rule has no remedy, which means that if they walk up and go, do you know why I pulled you over? And you go, you're not supposed to ask me that. And they go, yeah, but do you know why I pulled you over? So I ran a stop sign? Okay, you just admitted you ran a stop sign. So you go to court and they go, hey, the guy asked me. Yeah, well, it turns out there's no remedy for that. So the executive director of the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association says officers open with the question as a way to start a conversation. Yeah, right. In recent years, many departments have moved away from asking the question and start the interaction by telling the driver why they were stopped. There were some organizations that thought it put the driver in a position of self-incrimination, that they'd be admitting to something. And in an arrest situation, of course, that's not okay unless they've been read their rights, says the executive director. So he's been a member of the Bloomington Police Department for 30 years, 12 of those as chief, and he says you don't want to start the conversation in a position where the violator has to make an admission of guilt or something like that. So it's just a more positive way to have the interaction. Well, I agree with that. But it wasn't a conversation starter. It was, let's see if they just know why they, what they did, and they admit it. Because I've seen people get pulled over, and again, I watch these things on YouTube, where they go, do you know why I pulled you over? No. You were speeding. I don't think so. Yeah, you were doing 45 and a 35, but just back there. No, I was not. I was not doing 45. I was. You were. Did you get me on radar? No. Where'd you get the 45 from? I paced you. See, now, there's going to be a discussion about how accurate pacing is. They didn't get you on radar, But on the other hand, if they walked up and said, I pulled you over because I was speeding, 10 over, very different things. So lawmakers in California enacted a nearly identical law that went into effect in January in an attempt to limit pretextual stops. And several jurisdictions across Minnesota, including Minneapolis, had already put in some limitations on stops because of problems they've had. There's a person here who's the president of the local chapter of Communities United Against Police Brutality, said the change in law is much needed to prevent drivers statewide from potentially incriminating themselves by answering questions, but it's not perfect. She said she does not believe the new law will help prevent pretextual stops or lead to less instances of escalation because officers can still give any reason for a stop despite not being allowed to pose the traditional question. In addition, the last sentence of the new language removes any repercussions for officers who don't comply. By saying the failure to comply with the statute won't serve as a basis for exclusion of evidence or dismissal of a charge or citation, then you're just saying to the cops that even if they do this anyway, there's no consequences for it, and they can still go forward with their bogus charges, she said. So that's the problem. And we've talked about this before, that if you have a rule, okay, you put a rule on the books, you're not allowed to do this. The first question anybody asks is, okay, what happens when somebody breaks that rule? Oh, they get fined $10. Okay, it's $10. They get fined $1 million. Okay, that's serious. They get thrown in jail. Okay, that's serious. Nothing happens. What? Yeah, there's this rule where nothing happens if you break it. Can you imagine? And I often like to use sports analogies only because so many people can relate to them. Can you imagine if they said, okay, whatever you do, okay? Give you an example. Quarterback's going back to pass the ball. He has a receiver downfield. He throws the ball. He actually stops to watch and see what happens. And then a defensive person clobbers him and just drills him into the ground. It's a late hit. We're going to make late hits against the rules. Okay, what'll happen? Nothing. 15-yard penalty? No. 10? No. 5 and a new down? No. Nothing happens. So what'll happen when, I'm sorry, this rule will be on the books. What'll happen? The ref will throw his little flag, and he'll blow his little whistle. And he'll point to the person who did it and goes, and say, that's a violation. That's it. So why do we have a rule that's on the books? Because we don't want people hitting the quarterback late. I know people are going to go, Steve, there's already a rule in the books. I understand that. I'm saying, what if the rule simply said, you can't clobber him into the ground like that. You can't late hit the quarterback after he's throwing the ball. You can't. Just nothing will happen to you. Oh, no, there'll be a yell. Yeah, the flag will get thrown. Oh, yeah. The whistle will get blown. And in fact, he'll even face, how they do that, and he'll point, and he'll say, late hit on the quarterback. He'll even announce it. Will this perhaps shame the other side into following the rules? No, it won't do it. It won't do anything. So we have a rule on the books, and this is the problem. Without a remedy, the rule is meaningless. It is utterly meaningless. And in fact, let's suppose I said, let's take a look at all the rules in football now. And we're going to say that when you absolutely clobber the quarterback on a late hit, it's a 5-yard penalty. 5. Just 5. Just 5. That's all. No. And by the way, no new downs running. Just a 5-yard penalty. Defensive players go, who cares? We'll take that 5-yard penalty all day long if we can beat up their quarterback. So the rules have got to have remedies. The remedies have got to have teeth. Otherwise, the rules are meaningless. But I hate to even say this. It's a step in the right direction, sort of. But again, thinking nice thoughts doesn't make good things happen unless you act on them. So Minnesota police can no longer ask why a driver thinks they've been pulled over, says the headline, which should continue to say, except there's no remedy to enforce this new rule. So it was a nice thought, but it accomplishes nothing. So Bob, thanks for sending it. MinPost.com published that, and we'll have to wait and see if it does anything. Because I suspect right now there are cops walking up to cars in Minnesota going, do you know why I pulled you over? And a couple drivers are going to go, you're not supposed to ask me that. They're going to go, yeah, right, okay. So there you go. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Happiness fuels success, not the other way around.